Well, hey everybody, will a TikTok creator who stabbed a correctional officer to death get away with murder? Let's look into the case and why I think this kid might walk free. Hello everybody and welcome to Profiling Evil. I'm here in Southern California this week for work. I got up at 6 a.m. this morning to join Julie Grant on Court TV to talk about this Zachary Latham manslaughter murder trial. Now make sure that you're hitting that like and subscribe button so that you're getting all of our videos and you're subscribed, you're getting notified, everything else. And don't forget to stay tuned as I share a short clip on a short visit I had with Annie Elise over at 10 to Life today. I think you're going to have a lot of fun making fun of me. But first, let's look at the nasty neighbor stabbing trial. Well, hey folks, this murder happened 3 years ago today. It's on the anniversary that Zachary Latham is sitting in trial facing a jury who has to decide whether or not the then teenager purposely taunted Timmy Durham into an altercation that cost the man his life. It was almost 8 p.m. on May 4th, 2020, in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, that Zach Latham raced his vehicle up and down the neighborhood street, something he'd done many times, creating all kinds of conflict in the community. That sent Mrs. Durham out to confront Latham in the street.
What are you going to do, Karen?
That's not my name, so get my name straight. Go ahead.
You okay, Karen? Go ahead, get my tag.
Two.
Get my tag, Karen.
My name is not Karen, so get my name straight.
Get my tag, it's okay.
A45MFA. Sir, there's an officer.
It wasn't the first time that the two had squared off, and on one of those previous occasions, Latham actually recorded them on his mobile phone, turned it into a TikTok video that got more than 3 million views. Now, the Durhams say that it also opened the door to all kinds of other like-minded hooligans coming up and down the street, racing and harassing them. Well, the problems between the two neighbors continued, and on May 4th, Mrs. Durham again chastised Latham in his vehicle, and when she wouldn't back away, she claims that Latham struck her in the face, and then he drove away, up over a curb and to his home. Well, within minutes, things completely blew up. Now, Mrs. Latham approached him because she said that he had swerved at her 17-year-old son on his bicycle, causing him to crash off of the road. Well, when she went home and told her husband that she'd been hit in the face by him, things blew up. And Mrs. Latham's husband, William T. Durham, he went by Timmy, and his sons approached Latham in his driveway. In the video that was played in court, you can hear Latham telling him to get off his property while he's backing away from them into the garage. Now, according to court testimony in the documents, Latham went into his house at some point and picked up a knife and a taser. Now, the Durhams continued to encroach on his property and his person. All the while, he was backing up into the garage, telling them to back off. His wife, Latham's wife, was recording this entire altercation on her mobile phone. And this simply outraged the Durhams even more because they were convinced that Latham was just trying to get another video to post on his social media account. Then things went terribly wrong, and the three Durhams attacked Latham. Now you can see it on video. When this thing was over, Timmy Durham was stabbed multiple times and mortally wounded. Now, Julie Grant paused the discussion we were having about the court trial long enough to get my thoughts on whether Zachary Latham was a victim or a predator. Instead of answering, I kind of chose to respond based on the behaviors that I was observing. And I'm going to be really interested in what you think. Let's watch this clip.
All right, what do you think of this case? Tweet us, let us know. Let me bring in my guests, see what they think. In New York, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Marie Pereira is with us. And in Los Angeles, retired police commander and the host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King, is with us as well. Good morning to you both. Thanks for coming on the show. Commander King, tell me what your thoughts are looking at the initial presentations in this one, please.
I really appreciate Maria's stance on this because I felt the exact same way. Number one is if they can keep the defense, if they can keep from having his character and background and these foundational pieces that maybe he was doing this for TikTok fame or anything else, what really boils down is if they can continue to replay that piece that shows him backing up, telling him to leave his property. Him swinging the knife at one point, Julie, was really something that really caught my attention, because even with that, this pack of men still came at him. And I go back to the training that this corrections officer would have had over the course of his 51 years in how to deal with people one-on-one, how to take people down and other things. He knows the law. He knows what's his responsibility is to call police, not to go in and attack this kid. I think the young man's going to have a real strong chance of being able to get away with this thing because he was standing his ground and trying to avoid this. Now, playing the devil's advocate, it was important that we spent a little bit of time trying to understand, perhaps even justify the actions of the Durhams. I mean, clearly they had had enough. They were up to here with what was going on with Latham. And Latham potentially, or at least allegedly, striking Mrs. Durham was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. As we talked about this, we also talked about the fact that Latham's questionable character would certainly come out in the trial. He'd had other problems. Now, whether they can get that introduced into this trial or not, I don't know. And his bad behavior could come out even more as this trial goes on. But even with that, we wondered if it justified the aggressive approach that the Durhams took. Let's listen in on that.
Commander, this gives us a little more context. You know, they were all in this, weren't they? You know, he's saying the brother, you know, we knew mom was upset, and it was this witness here, Gage, who apparently was on his bike, 17 years old at the time, and the allegation is that Latham's in his car, speeding, swerves, tries to hit him, mom confronted him, everything kind of snowballs. Your thoughts, please.
Two things jumped out at me. First is the behavior in this thing. When we watch these two young men pull up on their bicycles with this truck racing up behind them, this was a posse going after somebody. They had pulled up and they were all about business and getting done whatever it was. Now, again, none of this takes away from the bad behavior that led up to all of this, but that is really an aggressive move to me. You see this kid backing into the garage. He's swinging a knife around. That ought to send you a message that somebody could get hurt here. But then I think this young man testifying right now kind of hurts the case for these folks, Julie, because he very clearly makes it evident that they go into the garage. This boy's already on the ground between two vehicles, and they jump on him and they're pummeling him. Rather than saying, hey, this kid Dylan is trying to pull my dad away and break up a fight, he says, no, I'm going to take him out of it so that they can continue to do things. I just don't think it's looking good for them on the prosecution side.
Right. Yeah, and especially when you put it like that, Commander, and as we watch that video again and again, you know, somebody swinging a knife wildly, you know, are you going to lunge toward them? I mean, you know, so there is a bit of, you know, if I'm on the side of the defense, I'm going to say there's a little bit of an assumption of the risk here going on, you know, moving toward this person who's in, you know, their place of domicile, arguably. I think you're both making great points about the defense having a really solid chance at winning this one.
Now, in my opinion, one of the most important things to consider is the fact that the Durhams were pursuing Latham into his garage. He was telling him to get off his property. He was backing up, and they were coming in on him. Now, I think the argument is going to be that the garage is part of Latham's domicile, his castle, and the law allows a person to protect their home or castle. I was fortunate to discuss this piece with Julie Grant and a talented former New York prosecutor, now turned defense attorney, who felt very much like I did about the evidence and the way it was starting to stack up. Let's listen in on this.
I think where they might have some problems, Marie, let me go to you on this, is where they are going into the garage, right? That is arguably an extension of the home, is it not?
It is, and it's extremely sad because, I mean, at the end of the day, this young man lost his father, but he's testifying truthfully. He's not exaggerating. And I think even if he wanted to, he couldn't say that all of that didn't happen because the girlfriend was videotaping the entire thing. I think I agree with Mike. It's not looking good at all for the prosecution because the cross-examination itself, the answers that are being solicited, is making out the case of self-defense, not retreating. He begged them to stop. They followed him in his garage, and they came there angry with an intention to make him pay for what he did to the mom. That is motive right there. They wanted to assault him. It's just not looking good for the prosecutors, but overall, it is a tragedy.
Right. I'm wondering how his experience as a corrections officer might have played into this situation. I want to ask my guests about that now. Retired Police Commander Mike King and Attorney Marie Pereira are on the show this morning. Mike, let me go to you on this one. Even with Zachary Latham, the defendant in this case, wielding that knife, swinging it wildly, Timmy Durham is still seen in the video, going towards him, being unafraid of that knife, it looked like trying to grab it out of his hand when you watch the video. What are your thoughts knowing his background and his work experience?
So he would have been trained in tactics on how to handle these kind of hand-to-hand situations, certainly trained in how to settle down a situation, not escalate the situation. Okay. And I'll tell you what, Julie, I'm a cop. I love law enforcement and I love the public servants, but we see the two sons sitting out on the curb line waiting for the commander-in-chief to show up, and he comes in and starts flanking this young man and leading the charge as they come in. Now, I don't know that his intent was to go in and beat him up, but he certainly hit his boiling point. His family was attacked, and he figured this is enough, and this thing has been going on a long time. But I keep going back to the fact that if anyone had wisdom, experience, and training, it was the victim in this case, and he continued to pursue this kid anyway into his garage, as we're seeing on the screen right now, and I think that's going to really backfire on him.
I'm with you. Yeah, and I appreciate that, what you mentioned about the training and what he's used to doing. We know prison is not a pleasant place, not at all. It's very dangerous. It can be very dangerous for corrections officers, as you know, and so I wonder if that's kind of where that's coming from, the fact that he appeared very unafraid here, went toward him.
Well, hey, folks, we're watching my conversation this morning on Court TV with Julie Grant about the Zachary Latham manslaughter murder trial that's underway in New Jersey. The case has polarized a lot of people, and many people theorize that this whole thing was about Latham building his social media account. Well, as I watched the behavior, it just didn't seem to fit, in my opinion. Latham may have done everything that the Durham family says he did, but that very moment when the assault happens and the murder occurs, it's all about behavior. And the altercation kind of looks defensive, and maybe even that Latham was scared. I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Hey, but before we go any further, I took some time today while I was in Los Angeles to go and visit a fellow YouTube creator and friend of mine, Annie Elise, over at 10 to Life. Now, Annie has an amazing new podcast called Serialously, and she invited me to do a live interview with her. She texted me a couple of my bloopers as I tried to say serialously. And you know what? I've had the ability to edit out tonight so that it sounds like I really got that down. It is a captivating name, and I wanted to share just a short clip as Annie and I got together today. Hey, everybody, it's Mike from Profiling Evil. I'm here with Annie Elise of Seriously. Is that right?
Serialously.
Serialously. Serialously, or do we want to push 10 to Life?
Serialously.
Okay.
You'll get it
There's
eventually.
another one. Hey, everybody, it's Mike from Profiling Evil. I'm here with Annie Elise of Serialously, and we have just had a blast talking about some of the current cases that are going on in the true crime community.
Thank you. And thank you for getting the name right. You said it 3 times that time. There were some bloopers, guys. I might include them, but thank you so much. And thank you for joining.
All right.
All right.
Done.
All right.
That was
That's
awesome.
a wrap. Thank you
Along
so
with my invitation to please go over to her channel, subscribe, and listen to the podcast. I think you'll really enjoy it, and we really appreciate Annie here at Profiling Evil. Let's get back to the Latham manslaughter stabbing murder trial. You know, we spoke about the age difference between the victim, an 18-year-old kid who just barely turned 18, and a 51-year-old correctional officer. This is a guy who spent 20 years working in a prison. And again, think about this. Latham is 18 years old, just barely, with a chip on his shoulder maybe. He was a private in the state Army Guard. And apparently he had enough money to buy some pretty high-performance vehicles, and that was the root of many of the problems that these two families were facing. Now, I mentioned to Julie my concern about Mr. Durham and his professional experience, and that moment that he snapped and decided to go in and confront Latham. This is a guy who undoubtedly was trained in how to de-escalate situations, how to work with violent prisoners, how to deal with angry people and tense situations. So what on earth went wrong? Well, within an hour and 20 minutes, Mr. Durham, Timmy, was pronounced dead at a local medical center from those stab wounds. Latham suffered a concussion and abrasions to his face and his neck and his legs, but now Latham is facing aggravated manslaughter charges that could land him in prison. Now, frankly, I don't see it happening unless something really changes in this trial. And that's what's going to be interesting to watch. Now, Julie Grant asked me what my thoughts were about the crime scene, which was incredibly bloody, and any personal reflections that I had from similar kinds of crime scenes that I had come across. Let's look at that.
Think about that, trying to sort out what happened there. What a bloody, messy scene that had to have been with the stabbing death of Timmy Durham. Let me bring in my guests, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Marie Pereira and retired police commander and the host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King. Mike, would you talk to us, please, about what it's like when you come up to a homicide scene like that and you need to sort out, you know, who's the victim, who's the aggressor, and especially with a case that's really messy like this, you know, you have the defendant, you know, in his home being the crime scene.
Yeah, these are tough cases, and I was having a little bit of a flashback as we were looking at that particular segment, Julie, remembering one particular homicide scene that I attended where I literally could taste the iron in the air from the blood on the ground. And to this day, whenever I sense that taste, I can tell that there's a scene where there's blood. Police officers are required to go in and not only control individuals, and in this particular case, I think we saw the law enforcement folks do a great job of getting the scene secure. They then have to go in and look at the behaviors that are seen in the crime scene, and you can literally start to unfold what happened step by step by looking at the forensics there, by scrape marks in the ground, by places where the blood has been transferred, or places where there's blood spatter in this particular case. Because of the horrendous amount of blood at the crime scene, there's going to be other transferences that occur, like feet being drug or the blood being smeared from one location to another, that are all going to be indicative of the motion of event that is going on here. And we talk about verbal versus nonverbal communication, and a crime scene is filled with nonverbal communication that really helps the investigator piece these things together. Horrendous things, horrible memories for those individuals that were involved in this. I can't imagine what these boys and this mother are going through, but in the same light, I can't imagine what the defendant and his wife and friends are going through as they relive the experience.
Isn't that the truth? And thank you for sharing that, Commander. That's just a great example of what people like yourself go through when you serve for many, many years and you see things people should never see. And you all exhibit such courage and going to these scenes and helping victims and putting your lives on the line. So thank you for sharing that. You know, it is real. We have a death here, and we're going to continue talking much more about this.
So what are your thoughts, folks? If you were sitting on the jury today, given the information that's been shared in this video and the things that you've read online, would you find Zachary Latham guilty of aggravated manslaughter? I mean, please enter your comments down below and respond to each other. Be kind to each other, because this is a pretty tense kind of a situation here. And there are polarizing views on this. But in closing, I want to point out that it isn't over once this case is over. The Durham boys are also facing criminal charges for that assault. Once this trial's over, they're going to face assault charges for the same incident. So how would you feel if Zachary Latham was acquitted, was allowed to go free, and then the Durham sons, who have already lost their father, were found guilty of assaulting Latham?
Commander, I know we're going to have to let you go, so just kind of a follow-up for you, please. With this whole situation, I feel like, you know, looking back, we know hindsight's 20/20, but any advice for people who, you know, might be dealing with a confrontational neighbor or coworker, or, you know, whatever the case may be, when you have somebody that might be seeming to look for trouble, you know, before things escalate and get really ugly and turn physical and deadly like this one did, any last-minute pieces of advice for our viewing audience?
Thanks, Julie. Take a deep breath, step back, and don't make a rash decision. They should have called police. They should have stepped away from this, and they should have given it just a few minutes. It may have been an entirely different outcome.
That's the truth. Deep breath. That never hurt anybody. Commander King, great to have you on the show. I know we have to let you go. We'll look forward to seeing you back here soon.
It's going to be interesting to see what your opinions are, and I hope you'll put them down below. But thanks so much for listening and supporting the Profiling Evil, and for tuning in. Please hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell and do everything you need to do to get our notifications on our videos. I hope you'll share us with your friends, and I hope you'll take time to weigh in the discussion area. Make sure you're checking out the description for links on our sponsors. In fact, I'm going to go to one right now. It's going to be short, so stick around. Hey folks, it's Mike from Profiling Evil, and I want to share my thoughts about our affiliate, Truthfinder. I use Truthfinder every single day to research the people and the cases that we're talking about here. But you can use it to reconnect with a loved one, find an old friend, or look up your former schoolmates. Now, they make searching really easy, and all you got to do is enter a name, an address, a phone number, or an email. Then you're provided with this really cool list that you can start to explore. Use Truthfinder to figure out who that new neighbor really is, or keep your family safe by checking out the parents in your kids' carpool. Now, many of you use the internet to search out new friends, but you can use Truthfinder to sniff out scammers and online predators, especially before you meet them in person. And folks, we get a small commission when you sign up. It's about enough to buy a small soda, but you gain the ability to satisfy your curiosity, protect your family, and find the truth out about people in your life. Please take advantage of the special Profiling Evil discount code. It's on the screen, and it's also in the description down below. And remember, you can cancel this thing at any time. Now, let's get back to today's crime case. Well, thanks everybody. Please watch for Profiling Evil on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course here on YouTube. And if you like podcasts, make sure you get Profiling Evil podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. Hey, from Southern California, have a great evening, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.